Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Vod'ika. Omega sat in the cockpit, alone. Hunter instructed her to stay on the ship as the rest of her brothers completed a rigorous mission. She had been up since 0400 in the morning. It was currently 2200. Tech had entrusted her to be their getaway flyer. Omega had taken a liking to flying the Marauder. As much as she did prefer being in the field, flying was her second favorite. Today, however, wasn't much flying. She had been waiting for the signal since late afternoon. Hunter had promised that he would come in, but she had received nothing, causing her stomach to churn. "When do you think they'll be back?" Omega sighed as she looked at the gonk droid in the corner. "They've been gone a long time. What if the mission went wrong?" The young clone slid out of her seat and started pacing slowly. Her mind was running through all the possibilities of what could have happened during the day. Hunter rarely broke his word, especially when it came to leaving her behind. He knew her fears of separation from the batch. Gonky carefully stood up, walking over to her. He shook back and forth while beeping. Omega chuckled as she patted the droid on the head. "You're right, they're probably fine. I'm just worried. I thought that they would have been back by now, or at least called." As if on cue, she was interrupted by a blaring alarm. Omega stopped pacing and quickly picked up the call. "Hello, Tech? Hunter? Are you there?" "Omega, we need a pickup. Immediately." Hunter's voice crackled over the transmission. "Prep the med table as well. Echo's been shot." "What?" Before she could ask any more questions, the line cut out. "Come on, Gonky, they need us." Omega jumped back into the pilot's chair. It didn't take long before the Marauder was zooming through the treetops. The darkness of the night wasn't helping with the visuals. Omega strained her eyes as she attempted to remember where exactly the pickup zone was. Her nerves eased when she saw the bright red flare explode only a few meters away from her current position. Steering the ship in its direction, she saw the familiar bunch. From her view, she could see the trouble heading towards them. Omega ignored the impending danger, landing the Marauder. The clone rushed out to greet her brothers. Wrecker was the first to approach the ramp with Echo, who was clutching his abdomen. "About time," Wrecker exclaimed as he passed Echo's arm to Omega. Omega looked at the ARC trooper with a concerned stare.
Are you okay? Hunter said you got shot. She guided him to the med table, helping him sit down. Nothing I can't handle, he assured with a forced smile. Omega raised an eyebrow, unsatisfied with his answer. She quickly ran to her room, where AZ sat on the ground, charging. With one press of its buttons, the medical droid shot up. Hello, Omega. It's nice to see you again. I was wondering... Not the time, AZ. I need you to take care of Echo. Omega pointed at the arc that wore a face of twisted pain. Of course, I'll get right on it, AZ replied rather cheerfully. Omega nodded her thanks as Wrecker's shout startled her, redirecting her attention to the door. She could see the last glare of an explosion. The ship rattled from the sudden shock. Omega ran towards the entrance only to find a group of stormtroopers awaiting her. Ducking, Omega was able to avoid the first punch. She cursed herself as she reached back to find her energy bow wasn't in its usual place. No matter, she could take the shiny one-on-one. Omega swiftly took down her opponent. Her small stature was finally an advantage. Just as she finished apprehending her target, the rest of the batch came tumbling up the ramp. Go, 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 Hunter shouted, pulling her along.
Go!
Pulling her along quickly, closing the hatch. Tech, get us up in the air. On it, Tech responded with urgency. The bomb is going to go off any minute now, Wrecker warned as he ran after Tech. That wouldn't have been a problem if you hadn't set it in the first place, Tech snapped back. After the most chaotic minutes, the Marauder was finally leaving the atmosphere. Omega didn't realize she was holding her breath until the light of hyperspace appeared. Hunter let out an audible sigh as he sank into his seat. Sleep was attempting to take over, but his mind was all over the place. The mission was almost a failure. Oh, the jobs they took for Sid. Tech, set course for Ord Mantell. Deadline for the full payment ends at 23:30. After what we just went through, it's still not enough, Tech admitted. I will look through the list of jobs for tomorrow. Tomorrow? Omega questioned with wide eyes. She looked between her two brothers. Hunter was covered with cuts and many bruises. He looked worse for wear. Omega had caught Tech's usual straight posture starting to droop. He was constantly lifting his goggles to rub his eyes. You guys need to rest, Omega crossed her arms. Hunter chuckled. We're fine, Omega. Don't worry about... A loud crash was heard from the back of the ship, followed by shouting. Omega groaned as she ran back to where the sound originated. AZ, she shouted as she picked up the fallen medical supplies. I thought I told you to patch up his wounds. That is what I was trying to do, AZ whined. CT-1409 was very uncooperative. My name is Echo, and I'm fine, the Ark snapped as he slapped away the hand of the medical droid. You're not fine, Echo. Omega pressed a cloth to his broken skin in the shape of a blaster hole. Sometimes she wondered how her brothers could be so careless about their well-being. Trust me, Omega, I've been through worse. That doesn't... Omega whipped around as yet another loud crash echoed through the ship. AZ, take care of him for real this time, she ordered, stepping away from her patient. What's going on back there? Hunter called back. Nothing, Omega answered as she found the source of the noise. Wrecker appeared to have fallen asleep, almost making it to his bunk. Oh, Wrecker, Omega muttered as she tried her best to help him onto one of the lower beds when the ship sudden acceleration threw her off balance. Omega crashed into one of the ladders, hitting her head. Full of anger, she marched into the cockpit, finding Tech leaning over the controls, passed out. Tech! Omega ran over and pulled him back. He was sound asleep, snoring. Putting the ship on autopilot, she fastened a seatbelt over her brother. Hunter sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes barely opened as he mindlessly scrolled through the list of missions. Omega didn't have any trouble swiping the datapad out of his hands. Hunter, you can't be serious. She quickly placed the datapad on top of Gonki. When she returned, she found the sergeant with his head lulled to the side. I said I don't need your help. Echo's shots resurfaced. Fuming, Omega left the cockpit, now back where she started. She fumbled around in the medkit, finding a syringe. While Echo was busy arguing with a droid, she snuck up behind him and stabbed his neck with the hypo. Omega, Echo gave her a look of betrayal before falling unconscious. Omega caught his weight, lowering him carefully onto the table. Thanks for trying, Hazy. She smiled tiredly at him. I don't understand why he wouldn't let me do my job. I have performed many types of surgery on all kinds of patients. My skills are trustworthy. Mistress Nalase had said that. That's enough, AC. Thank you. Omega held the droid in place as she powered him off. Finally, it was quiet. Omega finished addressing Echo's wounds, patching him up in less than 30 minutes. She carefully laid a soft blanket over him as she gathered the leftover supplies, taking them to Hunter. She worked on the multiple open cuts on his face, being as cautious as she could so she wouldn't wake him. He looked so peaceful. You guys are always telling me to look after myself, but you all need to do the same, the young clone whispered as she laid the last vacuum strip on his face. I don't want to lose any of you. Omega swallowed hard at the thought of her brothers returning from a mission, of her brothers not returning from the mission one day. One moment. She glanced at her comm, now reading 23:30. They had missed the deadline. Omega knew how furious Hunter would be with Sid. A few seconds after the Marauder pulled out of hyperspace, an Orbital came into view. Omega, through sleepy eyes, steered the ship to its usual spot. She found the flash drive that Hunter still had clenched in his hand. Taking it, she opened the door just ajar and made her way to Sid's parlor. Sid? The girl called. You're late, Sid said, her arms crossed. By 10 minutes, Omega exclaimed. 10 minutes too late. Sid held out her hand. Omega gave the information over. What's with the face? What? You look like you haven't slept in a week, the Trandoshan teased. Omega rubbed her eyes. It sure feels like it. I like you, Tiny. So here's what. I'll give you a full payment even though you were late. Take a day off tomorrow. I don't need a group of barely functioning clones working for me. She scoffed. She was a reputable businesswoman. She could go weeks without being paid. Really? Omega asked with a sense of bitter bewilderment. Sid was kind to her, but never this kind. Don't think it's going to happen often. I'm feeling nice today. Now go and get some rest. The Trandoshan shooed her away. Omega smiled. Thanks, Sid. Don't mention it, really. Sid pointed to the door. Omega walked back to the Marauder. The cool night air was crisp, sending a chill through her body. If she wasn't tired before, she was most definitely now. Omega let out a tired yawn as she climbed back up on the ramp, entering the warmth of the ship. To her relief, everyone was still fast asleep. Omega grabbed Lula from the gunner's mount and crawled next to Wrecker. His body heat instantly made her toasty. Good night, Wrecker, she mumbled as she closed her eyes and drifted off into a blissful sleep.